We don't have Suga because Suga is in Europe and let us know in advance that she would not be here. So I think we should get started if you want to start recording. The first thing I want to say is that it's really exciting that we have so many community members present at the board meetings. And I want to give everyone a gentle reminder that if you have comments, to try to keep them under 2 minutes. If you have more, and to try to speak like, twice. If you have more things to say, it's not that we don't want to hear you. It's that we need to conduct board business during this meeting. And you can email board@ignitionnorthwest.org anytime with any of your comments or questions, and we will gladly interact with you in that forum. It's just that we try not to keep these meetings going too long, and if people talk about things that aren't board related business, it makes everybody late, and a lot of us have jobs that we have to get up for real early in the morning. So that said, if anyone does speak for longer than 2 minutes, I'm going to kindly interrupt them and ask them to please reserve their thoughts for writing them down and send them to us in an email. Or things can get put in the comments too, but then they're gone. So I recommend the email. So
committees are great too. If people want to talk more in depth about things, we do that sometimes in committees also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times the comments that are said are like, oh, this would be a great discussion to have in a committee. And we can tell you which committee that discussion might be great in, just to help you. So let's start off tonight with the first thing on our agenda, which is liaison business. If we have any, normally we have a check-in from DPW, from stewardship, and from rangers. So if anyone is present from any of these departments, please say so, and let's get an update. Anyone here from DPW? Natasha, you're here from Rangers?
I'm here for Rangers, yep.
Okay, well, since you're the first to speak, you want to give us any updates?
Yep, the only update I have is Rangers are getting ready for budget, and their question was, what is the last date that they can submit their budget request to us?
That's a good question.
I say the day before we schedule our budget meeting.
Yeah.
So we're going to schedule our budget meeting today?
We should schedule our budget meeting at this meeting. It is on the agenda to get that on the schedule, the day and time that works for everybody. And once that's scheduled, then we can give due dates. Anyone from DPW? Is that it? Okay. Anyone from DPW or stewardship? No? Okay. The next thing that was on the agenda is produce reports. If anyone here is present from any production teams and has any reports or updates for us, great. If not, we can move on to board business.
I mean, I have an update.
Awesome.
Considering my wrap is due on December 1st, so I should probably have one. I just got the final venue bill yesterday. I'm still waiting on a couple of teams to send me their wrap reports. Marco, I need to connect with you because there are about 9 transactions that came out of the C-compression account that should have came out of the reignition account. And we need to sort that. And Ethan, I would really love to know if I can meet you at the storage unit tomorrow to get the grapefruit juice so I can return it, because that is a lot of money.
Cool. Anytime, just like I said before.
Okay. I messaged you last week and didn't hear back from you.
I didn't see any messages. You were on 9 or 10 at work?
Yeah, I can meet you there at 10 a.m. That's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, Kendra, just reach out. I have a fairly flexible schedule these days, so we can work whatever out.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I am trying to get this wrap report done as soon as possible. So if we can't get to it tomorrow, can we do Monday perhaps and square around those transactions?
Yes. Monday, I'm available anytime after 2 o'clock.
Perfect. I will send you a message at about 2:15, 2:30-ish.
Copy that.
That's all I have until my wrap report. But the other thing that we need to do is schedule the wrap meeting. Per my contract, my wrap report is due December 1st, but there's not a board meeting until the week after that. So would you like to do my wrap report during that board meeting, or should we schedule a separate time?
Well, we would like to have at least a 90% number, 95% number of either profit or loss from the event, so we can budget regardless of like the wrap meeting.
Okay. I will have that to you.
Yeah, and I think the wrap meeting can happen during the next board meeting in December. Anybody against that? If we have a 95% number before that, though, so that we can do our budget meeting. And same thing to Patty. I know you still have some payments. There are some payments still going out for critical reimbursements and stuff. We really need like not 100%, but close to that number, so we can look at our budget and our estimates from last year and see where we're at.
You do have that number for critical already, and as you said, we're just waiting on the reimbursements to finalize.
Okay, can you email that number to board at? Or tell us where we can find it if it's anywhere else?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Reboot.
Okay, if that's everything for producer reports, the next item for board business is the minutes from last month, read and motion to accept.
Great. I'm the acting secretary for this meeting, and here are the minutes from last month. In the liaison section, we had 3 reports delivered. DPW delivered their report. Deacon delivered the DPW report, and no business was reported for stewardship by Sexy Intern. No business was reported for Rangers by Natasha. Producer reports came from Critical, Patty, Reboot, Flemmy, C Compression. Kendra delivered that. Kendra reported on Production Symposium progress, and then on to board business. Minutes were approved from the September meeting. Ethan updated on taxes, which have been, the 2022 taxes have been filed, had been filed by the previous meeting. 2023 bookkeeping was in progress as of that point. We'll talk more about that tonight. And then we got to a handful of motions, namely 3 appointments were approved unanimously for Megaphone, Feynman, and Marley. The board unanimously approved a motion to assign longest length terms to highest votes received in the upcoming election. Marco was approved by the board to once again unanimously approved to be brought on board as our interim treasurer. He's here tonight. Thank you, Marco. There was a note about the Articles of Incorporation amendment that was recommended by the attorney. And then the officer updates. Frida delivered the president's update. Natasha delivered the vice president's update. Treasurer business was covered previously in the meeting. Secretary report was delivered by Mariah. And then our committee reports. Wendy, Holly, Feynman reported in on the tech committee. Ethan and Holly reported on events committee progress. Frida reported on fundraising committee progress. Sugar reported on acculturation committee progress. Frida reported on grants committee progress. Wendy and Megaphone reported on Comms Committee progress, and Natasha reported on Finance Committee progress. Those are the minutes as recorded. I move to approve the October 2023 minutes as read.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes accepted. Excellent.
Marley had their hand raised.
That was just voting.
Next item is the taxes and bookkeeping finalized. I think we just got notice yesterday that the bookkeeping was finally all taken care of. Maybe it wasn't yesterday. Maybe it was a couple days ago, but it was this week. So I know that Natasha is working on some things per that update, and Marco is probably starting to get up to speed. I don't know if we have any info or updates on any of that, or if it's still something we are needing to look over and get educated on.
I, for one, would like to take a look at the bill, because I know on the suggestion of the previous treasurer that was, hey, we didn't get detailed, like an itemized list of, hey, why these expenses were incurred, because at the same time we just got all of the info saying, hey, we're complete on our QuickBooks. We should have been, and there was one great big bill. I would love to see, and if we don't have enough details, as well as you, Marco, I would love you to take a look and make sure that I don't have any clue of what I'm looking at, but I would at least like to see something itemized. So, we hired a professional firm. I think we need a piece of paper saying what it is they did professionally and to what degree. That's all.
So I've just gotten access to the QuickBooks, to the Drive, to all the accounts and stuff. And so I would probably need to sit down with whoever has questions to navigate through what it is they have questions about. I have a list of things that I got from the previous treasurer of, these are the things I think we need to be done, and that should probably be agreed upon by the board to say, yes, here, prioritize these actions in this order and go to town.
It sounds like great food for that treasurer collaborative channel that was created on the Slack. And that's perfect. That's a line of communication. If I see something highlighted, I would love to go over there. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here to help. However, whatever y'all need, whatever questions you need answered. I'm trying to work out the online access to the BECU accounts, because it wasn't accepting the credentials that I thought we'd established when we went to BECU last Friday. So anyway, I got to sort that out. But I have QuickBooks, Bitwarden, all that stuff is I can get access to.
Great.
Great. The next item is to schedule the budget meeting, which should probably happen, in the next month. Hopefully before the next board meeting. So, I don't know if y'all want to just do this on Slack, or if you think we can hammer this out to find maybe a Wednesday evening at the usual board meeting time where we can do this. Natasha, go ahead.
Budget is usually 3 to 4 hours. I don't know if a weekday is the right time for that, or maybe a weekend where most of us at least are available, like on Saturday, let's say 9 or 10 a.m. and then run through a part of it. And if not everybody can do it on a Saturday, we can even do 2 sessions of like a few hours on Saturday morning, a few hours on Sunday morning, and see who's available when.
Okay. Do y'all think we should just Slack about this and figure out a Saturday that works for everyone?
Sure.
Yeah.
That works for me.
I don't have a Saturday, but we can talk about it.
Okay.
All right. Let's Slack about it.
slack about it.
We almost certainly are going to need to look at a couple other days too. Maybe we could slack like Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays or something.
Yeah, we could divide it up into small little chunks instead of doing, I mean, to me, a 4-hour meeting about a budget sounds pretty hard. Little bite-sized pieces throughout a couple of evenings might be easier to swallow. I don't know. We can work that out. But yeah, it's definitely a priority. There's a lot of things we can't really move forward on until we get those things figured out. And because we just got the bookkeeping, I mean, we couldn't have done this any sooner. So even though it feels like we're behind, we're really not, because we're playing catch up from last year still. So we're doing all right. The next item says W-9 data entry for 2023. I think that was just from last month's meeting. I don't know where we are on that.
We haven't started yet, but Suga and I volunteered to do data entry. It honestly will take less than an hour. We just need to figure out where we want it. And she had a folder that she wanted to make sure we put it in so that like the future treasurer can find it for next year's taxes, etc.
Great. All right. Next up is talking about the upcoming election. I know that we've now received 2 applicants. I'm still not sure how many seats we're trying to fill, but I know it's more than 2. 5, 6,
I think
8.
it's 7.
8.
7.
8 seats.
7 or 8, something like that. And this is under the assumption that the 4 people whose terms are ending are not running again. If my assumption is incorrect, please say so. I think I've gotten word from Wendy that she is not running again. I think Sugar has confirmed that she is not running again. Dirt Magnet has confirmed that he will not be running again. Flemmy, I think you're the only person that I'm not sure about.
I have said that I'm not running again.
Okay.
It's 7. It's 7 because there's
7.
4 of us and there's
It's
11
7.
spots. Yeah.
It's 7. There are 4 people running, like 4 people whose terms come up. There is 1 vacancy right now for the same class as I am in. Right now it's me and Marley, and there's 1 more vacancy in that class. And then I understand that Holly and Frida, both of you are retiring, so there'll be 2 vacancies in that class.
I just want to point out that my retiring is contingent on the fact that we get at least 7 seats filled.
Okay.
I don't want my vacancy to be what decides we don't have a
we need
functional board.
either 6 or 7 candidates to fill the board completely.
Yeah.
And we need at least 3 to have a functioning board.
Yeah.
We currently have 2.
Yes. I can post more. I shared it this week, but I'm gonna try and like do like a once a week and maybe its own thing instead of sharing it all together for next week.
Do we have a town hall scheduled for the election? I know we were talking about some dates or throwing that around. It was going to happen in January, and we were looking
We
at.
don't. I just posted about this in Slack about an hour ago. The venue that we wanted is unavailable. The big theater room at Youngtown is under, they're renovating it or something. So it's not available until like April. If anybody has any other ideas, Youngtown is offering a studio room, which is smaller and comes without built-in seating. So I'm not sure if they have chairs that we can put up there or what, but it doesn't have like the theater seating that the bigger theater has. If anybody has any other ideas of a good theater style place that we can run a town hall at. The potential 2 dates that we were discussing are January 7th or January 21st. I don't remember why the 14th wasn't a possibility. Marco?
Previously, we rented out the Mount Baker Community Center for town halls. We had a potluck and a town hall meeting. They have seating, they've got projection, they've got audio. Pretty sure they had sufficient internet to stream it.
Thank you. I will reach out to them tomorrow.
We were talking today about the possibility of putting together a survey, like what's it called? Survey Monkey is one of the free surveys out there, to the community about this election, and asking questions about, why people don't want to step up and be I mean, I don't know. It was just an idea we threw around. Like, how could we put this into a questionnaire so that we can gather sort of the community's voice on what the reservations are about running for the board, what kind of things we can do differently. Yeah, so that's a possibility. We also talked about doing that for kind of how we want to re-envision the rack. So those are two things that are sort of stirring. But the big question is, like, what happens if we don't have enough candidates? And I mean, there are lots of possibilities. Feynman, go ahead.
So, yeah, like I've heard talk of, we can't legally operate without 7 board members, and I don't think that's technically true. The bylaws do require that we have 7 to 11 seats, which sort of means that that's the, our designers, like our founding folks, desire for the organization was to have a pretty decent sized board up to kind of the current size board. But a couple of things, like the even the like legal precedent when for like state agencies that have similar requirements, if there are unfillable vacancies, those just don't count for purposes of quorum, etc. I worry a lot about the workload because I'm going to be one of the 4 board members if we only end up with a 4-person board. But like, I kind of feel like workload might be a surmountable obstacle. I think from a just like propeller-headed technical, legal, operational perspective, I think we'll be okay. It's not like we'll have to dissolve the organization or anything. But all of this said, I kind of feel like, the pitch to everyone in the room. I'm fresh. I have, a decent amount of energy for trying to make 2024 go. There are others in the room that are fresh and have a decent amount of energy for trying to make 2024 go. Like, if you want to be part of a fairly fresh take on what it means to be Ignition and what it means to make our parties go, like, please consider putting your name in the hat. If you have questions about what that might entail or who your colleagues would be, reach out to those who have been on the board for questions about what it will take, and reach out to those of us that are recently buckled into this contraption. If you've got questions about who your colleagues are going to be, and we'd love to explore it. I know, a seat on a nonprofit board isn't a thing for everybody. It certainly is. It's a big commitment, not just in terms of time, but also in terms of spoons, skills, etc. Right? But like, please consider putting yourself in the ring. I would argue the odds have never been more in your favor than right now at this very moment with 7 openings. Give it a think. Reach out to us if you've got questions. There are plenty of other ways to help too. And kind of on the theme of, we'll figure out how to make this go one way or another, whether we've got a 5-person board or a 7-person board or an 11-person board. There are definitely procedural solutions to all of these problems. So Frida, you're muted.
Oh, Holly, go ahead.
Hi, I was going to throw in another sweet deal about that. If people have specific skills, if they have board experience, if they've worked on nonprofits, if they are a lawyer, if they're, a finance person, et cetera, those are especially in high demand. And the board will be looking at not every single term has to be 3 years, because the board's going to want to have every few years, every year a couple more, so we get back on track. So it's not like 7 people are elected at once. So it's like 3 here, 3 here, 3 here kind of thing. 3, 3, 4, whatever. Anyway, if you're interested and you have special skills, definitely consider running, and then talk to the board about your desire maybe to even do it 1 year or 2 years, and be one of those people who might be willing to roll off a little bit early to keep things staggered and share your awesome skills.
Ethan, you had your hand up?
Well, I was for a second, but I realized this may be the plug with so many people, and we have needs, and the way Precipitation Northwest does it, and hey, it's less of a please throw your hat in the ring and you're gonna automatically get hired, but where they don't have elections so much as they have interviews because they have needs. I would really love to figure out what it is, a list of needs we have as a group with the workload, and we put that out to the public. And instead of like, hey, we're taking anybody, no, we actually have special needs, because the entire play of the last couple of months with all the talk is, why would we just stick anybody in that's not professional, such as me, and throw them into the situation here? And when there are some dedicated things that we have needs for as an organization. So I'm just saying, maybe this is that time that we head in that direction, and we still have an election. Just know that to fill some very specialized slots. That's what I gotta say.
Prism?
Yeah, so for people not looking to run, I know that we're critically low. Would you guys consider potentially, or is it in the bylaws, for somebody to fill in until a seat can be filled? So if you don't have enough people to fill the board, can people temporarily step in until an election can be made to actually fill the full seat, rather than a full contract?
I think from a propeller head technical perspective, the board is the board, and they're either elected or appointed to serve a defined term, with defined responsibilities, etc. There are ways to get in, ways to resign, ways to get kicked out. And I think that like interim board member isn't exactly a thing, but the spirit of your idea, I think, is a good one. And I think that largely one of the things that we could be doing or doing more of is emphasizing committees, right? Like, you all have heard many, many, many other people in this room, people on the current board, say, please get involved in committees. The committees are kind of, yeah, exactly to Marco's point, like committees are kind of designed to be non-elected people who are excited to participate in a particular aspect or aspects. There's nothing stopping you from, to my knowledge, no 2 committees are scheduled at the same time. There's nothing stopping you from participating in all of the committees that you have any interest in participating in. And the interesting thing about the committees is effectively they make just short of binding recommendations to the board. The threshold for a committee, for an adopted resolution in a committee to not move forward with the board, is that the board has to actively vote it down, right? By default, committee actions they are the policy of the organization. So I actually feel fairly strongly, Prism, that that's exactly the thing that you're looking for. If you feel like there's not a committee that covers a scope that we should be relying as an organization on community passion and interest and ability and connections and skills and whatever, the board has the ability to charter new committees with fairly low friction. And I think that that would probably be a very effective tool for getting community involvement if there are more things that should be in scope for. I think Marley was after me.
So also, nearly half of the seats that are open right now are less than full board terms. So one of the seats is a 1-year term, 2 of the seats are 2-year terms, and only 4 of the seats are 3-year terms at this point. So there is that to consider.
I was just going to add, people can also volunteer at the board level. If someone wanted to do something and it didn't fit in a committee and they just wanted to volunteer their labor because they're awesome, people can totally volunteer at the board level too.
Awesome. Thank you guys for all your responses. I appreciate it.
Marley.
No, that was it. I'm
Oh.
good, thanks.
Anything else from anyone on this topic? No? Okay. The next item is treasurer engagement, but I think we sort of covered that already. Marco is just getting up to speed. The bookkeeping just finished. The taxes are finished. There's just a little more time needed to look over things and to work with us on budget. So Marco, thank you again for being here. We super appreciate you. And unless you've got something else you want to add, we'll move on to the next thing.
Nope, nothing for me. Thanks.
The next item was left over from last month about the incoming grant. I don't know where we're at with that. We may not have any updates. No. Okay. The SAM entity registration. We were awaiting fiscal updates before redoing it, and I think we have those now, so that needs to be done. And it would be great to assign someone to that task that's willing to take it on.
Did we decide like who among the remaining board members would be willing to be the SAM registrant?
I don't think we did. So that's why it's here again.
Are there any of the 4 remaining board members who would be willing to be the person on the forms as the SAM registrant? They just need an actual human's name. They won't do it to like just a, committee.
I'm happy to be, well, I mean, with 5 more minutes of investigation into what I'm saying yes to, I would be an enthusiastic yes for that.
We'll say it's a yes, probably.
Yeah, a yes, great. A yes, probably.
Awesome, thank you. Next is updates about the volunteer appreciation party. I think maybe there was some progress made there. Ish.
Yeah, Marley and I met. Marley gave me some background on this has been something that's been in the works for a while. What we discussed was having this be like a yearly event, like a spring picnic in Gasworks, something that if there's budget for, that we could provide some food for, and to not have like, it is for volunteers, but not have like a bar for entry. Like you don't have to have volunteered a certain amount. You're just, the community is invited. And this is we celebrate our community members kind of a thing. So yeah, I guess when we go over budget, that will help give me a better idea of what the budget is for that. But I would like to start looking at dates that are available at the Public Parks Department. Right. Who's Feynman? Oh.
Hey, just one thing about having it be open to everybody. The community actually wanted a specifically volunteer appreciation party, like to give back to the people who volunteer and lead and everything. And we were going to use, leftover booze that we have, funds towards like feeding them, like really make it nice and have it be like a perk. So that came out of I can't remember if it came out of this town hall or the town hall when Mylene and I and Bacon and all were elected, but one of the two, the community made a case that they wanted to have like a thank you to the volunteers.
Okay. My opinion on that is only that like making this an exclusive event where we provide booze and we have to find a venue that allows us to bring in our own alcohol and like the permitting around that and that sort of thing. And it just the cost of it, when I don't really have an idea of what the budget even is. Something that was more of like a regular thing was also something that apparently in previous years people had talked about having. So that's my concern there. And also just like the figuring out, like, do we have like a specific requirement then for people to attend? That seems like I also have I've talked to a lot of people who are like, should we be putting, is this, I hear you that people in the community, is it people in the community in like a board meeting who have said that this is something that they want to have, or has there been like a poll of any kind? Because I do wonder like, if this is something that is important for us to spend our money on for volunteers, or if volunteers would like different perks that are a little bit more like, we haven't been able to roll over tickets for volunteers and that kind of a thing. Like, yeah, so that's just where I'm at with that. But I'm open to any suggestions. It's just what everybody feels like.
The history of it is that we did actually get a space in a park at one point, and we're just going to have like a big picnic. And the feedback from both the volunteers and the community at the time was that they really didn't like that we couldn't have alcohol at that park. And so we let go of that reservation. We canceled it. So there's nothing wrong with having a community picnic every year. Like, we could totally do that. But I think that the volunteer appreciation party should be a volunteer appreciation party. And I mean, we can talk about criteria. I mean, I don't know, if you volunteer an hour, I guess you're a volunteer.
Right. I feel like it's okay to leave it up to the public to like kind of decide, like, am I a volunteer? Like, is this for me, rather than like tracking all of it and like making it like a thing that's like a requirement. My concern is that
well, we were going to email all the volunteers. We have lists of all
okay. If we have a list of the volunteers, that's definitely, my thing is that, I think I'm not on the side of like it being a requirement that people drink at something like this. And that's why, we have a lot of events that are really like substance focused type. And I wonder, is that really necessary? If it is, I mean, like, I'm almost willing to like do like a Survey Monkey to that email list. Like, what is it that you guys want to have? Because I don't know. And I'm not, if that's what the community wants, that's totally fine. But,
that is what they said at the town hall. We told them that we had a reservation for a park shelter that would hold hundreds of people. And the problem with it was nobody would be allowed to drink there at all. And it really didn't go well. People didn't like the idea that nobody could drink. I don't think that anybody wants this to be mandatory drinking, that like you drink if you show up. But I think people did want the volunteer appreciation party to be, a possible event that they could have alcohol at.
Was this at the last town hall?
I can't remember if it was the last one. I think it was maybe the one that Milene and me and Bacon and David were elected at.
Okay. Well, I think we can talk about this a little more to further flesh this out. But I kind of like, I wonder, because I also like the last board meeting that I attended wasn't super well attended. And I do wonder, like, if we could get like a better cross section of the volunteers to see what it is that they are interested in. But if that's what people want to have, if we would like to like spend a little bit more money and make this more of an incentive for people, that's absolutely doable. I just need to kind of figure out like what we're able to spend.
Budget is an important part of this conversation for sure. And since we're not there yet, it's hard to make those decisions. So we can just address this at our budgeting meeting and see where we are.
I'd love that.
I wonder, do other people have thoughts about having it be not volunteers, just open to everybody, or like?
It wasn't that it was going to be open to everybody. It's that, we've got volunteers that are theme camp leads. We have volunteers that are like people who have put in specific hours. So it's open to volunteers, but people should self-identify versus sending it out to a specific list and people feel like they're being slighted.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't clear. That's what I meant by that. Like letting people decide if they feel as though they are the volunteer who is in need of being, appreciated.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you're a theme camp lead, you are volunteering a lot of
Yeah.
time, even if
Yeah.
you're not volunteering for production. And if I was somebody who led a really big theme camp and I volunteered a lot of hours and effort and I didn't get to go to this party with other volunteers, I would feel slighted. So I absolutely see that point. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. But we can talk about what the budget is for this. Oh, Natasha.
Yep. I just think that we should announce it as a volunteer appreciation party, but then not actually check any lists as people come in. So people kind of know this is the volunteer appreciation party. Who's a volunteer? Everybody's a volunteer.
Yeah, we're not going to turn people away
Yeah,
because they don't
exactly.
have enough hours on sign up.
Yeah, I'm not going to start, having security and a bouncer and like a list. I'm sorry, you're not on the list. How many hours did you volunteer? Who was your lead? Yeah, no. But like people should know it's a volunteer appreciation party that can come and appreciate the volunteers.
Feynman.
That's not me. Wi-Fi's next.
Oh. Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I just I think one word of caution that I would have against getting too extravagant is if the goal is to grow our volunteer numbers and have greater participation throughout the events, then we're looking at having a larger guest list for a volunteer appreciation party. So things like venue capacity and any additional costs, foods, like that all kind of scales. So that's just kind of the input I wanted to provide.
Yeah, I agree about that a little bit. Like if we were to have it at a venue and there was like a cost, like we probably, and also a cap, we'd probably have to like cap it and possibly have like a guest list, which could be limiting. I do not understand how this Jitsi hand raising thing works, but anyways, I think those are all like really good. And I have that all in my notes, and we can discuss what the budget is for it and kind of go from there. Looks like Frida walked away.
Sorry, I have really bad internet and I keep getting kicked out of the meeting, so I apologize. I'm turning off my video just so that I don't get kicked out again. All right, so the next thing on the agenda, well, I wrote new board members the onboarding plan because I don't think we ever really finalized our plan for any kind of formal onboarding. And then there was the burn after meeting that happened that sort of took away some of the dates that people were available. So I just want to say it now. We still need to do this. And maybe that's another thing we can work out in Slack rather than working out here. I know Holly had gathered some dates that worked for everyone. Maybe we revisit that list and put new dates up and have something happen. And that's it. Go ahead, Megaphone.
Oh, yeah. I have a thread in Slack that Marley has commented on. My dates are pretty open. I think my schedule is about the most open. Feynman, have you looked into that one yet?
No, but I'll do that. I'll do that very, very soon.
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic that there will be lots of overlap.
Yeah.
And I'll get my answers in. Sorry.
Most of the dates were things that I could make work. So once we have that figured out, then we can have the rest of you involved, but we'll get on that.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next thing is the burn after meeting update.
Ooh.
Like, if you want to share any really big takeaways or ideas or things that stood out.
Yeah, I can go. I'll start by pointing out that there are 3 of us in this room that were there. Unfortunately, Natasha's body didn't want to cooperate with him being there, but I was there, Megaphone was there, and Wi-Fi was there. it was a very interesting conference. I think that the turbo takeaways, because we could be here all night and I don't want to make that happen. The turbo takeaways for me was there's a whole lot of interest and kind of ongoing conversation among organizations, a lot like ours, around things like on-site communication technology, which is a familiar topic for me, for those of you that know me. And things like, what does each organization do to solve the rack-like problem, like to fill the rack-like space? And here's my double turbo kind of rundown of what the, I'll say, general consensus answer is to that, which is almost all of the boards, at least among the organizations that were present, have a thing that they call the conduct committee. The conduct committee is largely filling the same space as the rack. There are different levels of arm's length from the board that the conduct committee represents. It was sort of consensus awkward that it was often chaired by the same person that was so bad at losing the least reluctance game that they were also the board president, which does say something about how these organizations work and how the volunteers happen to, there's kind of a pecking order of who's best at saying yes and who's best at saying no to getting roped into more responsibility. But the conduct committees largely had a very similar structure to the rack. They were largely solving very similar problems, and they were largely sort of doing the fact-finding component of the process, making recommendations to the board. And then under almost all circumstances, and this was, I think, a little bit different than our memorandum of understanding with the rack, under almost all circumstances, the board ultimately retained the final sculpting of the list, and didn't end up often getting in arguments with the conduct committee over whether they were ignoring the conduct committee or listening to the conduct committee, because almost all of these organizations sort of recognize that at the end of the day, responsibility for safety and quality of events it's a board thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the board that's ideally under advice of professionals managing the liability of the organization and the overall safety of the event. So I can say a whole lot more there, but that was kind of the high level take. Everyone finds this really, really hard. Everyone finds it really, really hard to keep volunteers motivated to do this extremely difficult work. It often fails when you try outsourcing this and it ends up kind of like back on the board, but it's not the full board. Like, it's still kind of this abstracted thing, and there's kind of an established typical, not necessarily ours, but typical sort of containment structure for this. I'll stop talking. There's a whole lot more to say, but I'm sure Jess has some things to say, and I'm sure Jimmy has some things to say.
There are so many things that, I mean, there was, we were there listening to a build team for Flipside for their effigy, talking about burnout. We had a very long conversation about all of this conduct committee stuff, and a lot of side conversations. What do we call that? Hallway conversation, which was probably the most valuable part. And I think that I could get into all the details, and I'm happy to talk to any about this in more detail at any time too. Feel free to reach out to me. But my biggest takeaway was being connected to these other groups more can only help us as an organization, because reaching out to these people and having these conversations really inspired me to have a lot more like thought around all these things. Like, I was like, somebody said reports that they take in get code names, so they're not using the person's name. And so therefore we can talk about that code name to other people without letting other people know who is involved in that kind of a thing. Like, just like little things like that, being able to get that information from other people and creating a network of all of these regionals. I know that there is like a regional network, but like there hasn't been a lot of like communication between. So it sounds like this conference will happen again next year. The guy who put it on was really jazzed about how well it went. And I think that it would be very important for everyone who is on the board to try and prioritize that as something next year. Natasha?
Yeah, I want to bring a couple of things. So yeah, unfortunately, I planned on going. I had my flight ticket, I had my event ticket and everything, and then my body decided that I need to go to hospital and have my gallbladder removed instead. It really sucked. Yeah, I really wanted to go. I want to ask for two things from the board. One is I want to ask, I got my ticket refunded, so this is not a problem for me, but I would like to ask that the board actually reimburses the tickets for the 2 board members that went and potentially maybe the 3rd community member. Financially, we're doing fine. I'm going to talk about this soon when we get to the financial report, but we have the money. We can totally reimburse those tickets. What say other people?
I'm staying out of it, but for context, the conference tickets were, I think, $145.
Yeah, $145. We have, by the way, we have a budget of $2,000 set aside for conferences and stuff like that in our annual budget for 2023, and there's definitely enough money in our in what I'm seeing in the bank and in QuickBooks that we can totally afford that. Marley? Or
I
who
thought
was
we
first?
already.
Wi-Fi was for
Okay,
Oh.
Wi-Fi, go.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to kind of add my thoughts on the conference. I was pretty jazzed to go. I reached out to the organizer and, who I'd known from Texas and was like, hey, this is great. It's so good. And I think for me, one of the big takeaways, and Megaphone kind of touched on it, was having the conversations between regionals, having the different groups talking is such a powerful thing for our community. Like realizing that everyone's trying to solve the same problems, and maybe some folks have come up with a really brilliant solution for something that is just super great. And it was awesome for me to have like some of like my Seattle community and my Texas community talking to each other and getting to meet, like the folks from Alchemy and Apogea, and just that cross-pollination and being able to learn from each other and all of that. And, it's really cool. And then just to see how much is similar across different regions is really cool, because it's just like, wow, this really is a global movement. So I'm really jazzed. I think the conference went really well, and I definitely think that the board should definitely prioritize sending as a strong contingent for next year for sure. It sounds like there's even rumblings that that some folks at the Big Burn are trying to bring back the Global Leadership Conference. So maybe in the next couple of years that becomes a thing. But these conferences, things like Safety Northwest, they're super important.
I think it's a great idea, and I think that if we have the money in our budget, once we look at numbers, that reimbursing our board members is should definitely happen. I don't. If anyone's opposed to it, say so. But I think we should. Personally, I think it's important, and I think we should write it into the budget for next year, for at least 3 board members to be able to attend again.
Okay. Holly? And then Marley after that?
I think Marley might have been before me.
Okay, yeah, all right, Marley first, sorry.
Yeah, Frida beat me to it.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Okay, Marley, Holly?
Same thing.
Okay.
The only thing I was going to say is we don't actually know what money we have just by looking at this report today. So I want to make that decision when we do the budget. I'm assuming we have $300 to cover 2 tickets, but it's just, yeah.
We have, so Okay, I'll get to it later. We have money. We're pretty good.
Well, we don't actually know that. We
Mm.
haven't looked at all of our income. We haven't looked at the donations compared to last year. We haven't looked at, I mean, I'm glad that you went over the budget today, but we don't actually know that. Like we
I
haven't
can
had
tell
any
you how
true
much we have in the
reports.
bank right now.
Right, but that doesn't necessarily equal what money we have. Like we just got a
No, but
$20,000 bill today.
It's a very good indicative. At this point, it's a very good indicative because we don't have a lot of. I'll get to it in the financial committee report. Reboot. You wanted to say something on this?
I just wanted to suggest considering sending producers to conferences like the Denver one as well.
Yep. And the other half I wanted to suggest, again, we can discuss numbers later. I reached out to Adam. I know the producer of this event. I know they lost. He's in the red for about 2,500. I'm suggesting that we throw as a grant towards that event about like $400 or $500.
I love that idea.
Yeah, sounds great to me.
Yep.
I think if we can budget for more than just board members to go, as Reboot said, and a few other people chimed in, that would be great. It all just really depends on the budget and what we can allot to it. But yeah, it would definitely benefit anyone who's on production and rangers and so on and so on. It's just a matter of funds.
Yep.
Yeah, I would prefer budgeting for producers to go before sending a grant.
Well, this is regardless. This is like this year versus next year. This is like this year's budget, throwing them a grant, not for participants, throwing a grant to the producer of that event so that he'll be able to produce another one next year. And then a next year budget thing of allowing producers to go and not just board members.
Feynman, speak up.
I only barely meant to put my hand up. I'm sympathetic to the organizer. I'm not sure that, well, okay, so charitably, education is part of our nonprofit's mission. So I do believe that this is in scope. On the other hand, I don't think that the event's solvency is dependent on our generosity in any way. I suspect that the event will happen again. Adam certainly thought that the event would happen again. And if he needed a bailout, I think he could pass a collection plate and get participation from more than just us. I'm more inclined to support the event by participation than I am by charity. But honestly, this is a little bit more miserly than is my heart. But I do feel that stylistically, I don't know that I want to set this precedent that no matter how much we believe in the event, we help in that way to backstop the producers of an event. So I don't know, like I'm not, it's not a hell no, but it's a, like, are we sure kind of is sort of my posture here.
I think by budgeting to send more people to it next year, we are supporting the event and also our community benefits.
That's how I feel too.
That's
Anything
my
else
feeling.
on this?
That's my feeling also. And as stewards of like the local community's money, like people that come to events and have donated locally to Ignition Northwest, I think, you know, are probably looking at our mission statement and looking at what we do here. And, you know, I think improving the ability of our producers and leads and directors and board and everything to serve the community better with this awesome thing is great. But I feel like giving cash outside of our area of scope is maybe not totally what a lot of people intended by giving us that money. And I might instead give a scholarship to someone to go to like Pratt like we used to, or hold more Consent Academy classes, or do more local education events, like if we're gonna have $1,000 to donate to something.
Wi-Fi, go ahead.
Maybe it's something where we could kind of do a yes and with the financial side, because I think the sort of that counterweight of pumping the brakes, like, wait, maybe we shouldn't be spending money. Maybe it doesn't need to all fall on Ignition. There was a directory, there was a Slack for the conference. We could do a, pass the hat around for it's the Burn After Meeting conference. But we could, essentially crowd fund those funds from the other events, and then maybe it's less of a burden and it's an easier thing for us to sort of manage, from both a financial and a sort of conscience, ethical, mission alignment standpoint.
Sounds like a good community project. You want to do that?
Yeah, I could take that on. Yeah, I guess.
I would start by reaching out to Adam though. Wi-Fi. Like I know you know Adam. I would start by reaching out to Adam and just ask if that's something he would be receptive to, and then feel free to run point on that, and like certainly reach out to me/us, right? Like it sounds like there are people in this room for whom that this resonates, and maybe pitch it to the organization, but it sounds like we don't quite have, it's certainly not unanimous. Natasha could push for a vote here, but that's kind of my thoughts.
I'm not going to push for a vote. I might push for a vote for covering the expenses of the people that went, but not for that.
Any last minute things on this subject, or should we move on? Moving on? All right. Next on the agenda is the alumni email policy. I think that's just something we need to decide on. 60 days after board, producers, how long for leads after event? These are the questions. Go ahead.
So there was a resolution that was under discussion in the tech committee that didn't get closed last month when the tech committee met, and the tech committee this month meets next Tuesday. But one of the things I think that would benefit clarity around this resolution would be input from especially those of you who happen to be in the room who have alumni email accounts, and your thoughts on how attached you are to it and what you feel like the policy should be, etc. I think Reboot's got his hand up.
I assume by alumni email you're talking about someone who isn't actively working for the org, and so that would include me. I'm using my Ignition NW email right now for critical business, so I don't think 60 days would be enough, even for official business.
We would have to, if we did that, obviously instantly give producers back their org emails when they were elected or selected for producers. The reason why we're talking about having alumni, including maybe for producers, is that our lawyer has advertised or advised us that we can't keep having board members that roll off or producers that roll off still have Ignition emails and represent Ignition, and that we have to have some process for like ending their access to their ignition.org email and he had said just cut it off completely, and we had said, well, it'd be nice to give people an alumni email and they could put all their things that they wanted in alumni, and then they're not like representing the organization, but they still have access to like an email within.
Feynman?
So I've worked with a lot of attorneys in my life, and my policy for dealing with attorneys, especially when we represent an organization, is to make sure that the attorney has heard the statement of, this is our intent, this is the problem that this is the values that we have, that our community has, this is the problem we're trying to solve, and then asking the question, what is our exposure and how can we mitigate that, right? I think that what we have currently heard with respect to alumni email accounts is not the answer to the question of what is our exposure, how can we mitigate that? It's, wow, we have recent evidence that we're extremely exposed here. Is this a good idea or not? And he said no, which is the easy thing to invoice $200 for and definitely never get yelled at about, right? Because it was the conservative legal advice. So my intent here is to sort of explore what we as a community value, right? Like, I don't know what the answers are here, but like there could be value in, wow, this is kind of an interesting vanity perk. There are ways to kind of mitigate the stakes, right? Like you can imagine that we migrate alumni to an @alumni.ignitionnw.org account so that at least when they're sending email, it's crystal clear that they have a slightly separate status than currently operationally involved as day-to-day representatives of the org, etc. And I would certainly be willing to spend another $200 to get kind of the more nuanced answer to the more nuanced question from the attorney. That's my position here. I mean, this isn't a hill that I want to die on particularly, right? But like just kind of my overall approach to how we approach legal questions and community policy and that sort of stuff. Like, ask an attorney, should we do this? Get no 99.9% of the time. Get no plus an invoice 99.9% of the time. I think Kendra was next.
I would like to second what you actually just said right there. This is something that I've dealt with in dealing with email access issues for numerous employees and corporations that I've worked with. And there's two parts to what I want to say. Is number one, 60 days is not enough, especially for a producer of an event. That's I wasn't able to finish my wrap until April of this year, and for 2022 C compression, and having just an arbitrary cutoff of that prior to me even being able to complete speaking to my team and all of my leads who have Ignition Northwest addresses, that would have been pretty catastrophic. So I think there needs to be a nuanced approach to how and when we would be removing access. But I do really like the idea of the alumni because I do think that there is a concern with, especially recent events, people speaking for the org that shouldn't necessarily be speaking for the org. So I would really love to hear more conversation of what an actual reasonable time limit would be.
Marley?
So like the other people that have spoken, I've kind of been in a bunch of organizations that have done this. And my concern would be our practical application, because historically we have not been good at managing our accesses. And the thought of going back and forth between alumni addresses and current Ignition addresses, given the number of people that bounce back and forth between being active volunteers and inactive volunteers, to me, that process seems like it'll be a little bit complicated in the way that we manage our accesses. So that would be my concern.
I was just agreeing with what Ethan was saying in the comments about why don't we let this not have a stringent amount of days, but rather let the person who has the email decide how long they need it for. and then say, hey, you know, I'm good. I'm not going to be producer again. I don't need this anymore. You can go ahead and, you know, shut this email off. Or if they need, you know, because like Kendra was saying, like sometimes it can be 6 months. I think as far as leads, I mean, just from being a lead and then not being a lead and getting emails for a group that I was no longer on production for was a little annoying. So, you know, like I was a lead in 2022 and not in 23, but I still got emails for Art Vision in 2023, and I would rather have not have. So yeah, like I think we leave it up to people to how long do they want it. And I think for leads, it's like once the wrap has been done, if they know they're not going to do it the next year, then they have the possibility of saying, hey, I'm done. Is that it? I'll just topic. Everyone's so quiet.
I mean, we'll definitely have to explore more. I'm definitely camp don't turn off producers' emails fast at all and keep it open as long as they need it. But I do think we do need to have a policy, at least for the board email, that it ends at some point after their board tenure is over. There is a lot of business and information and such that board members are privy to, and shutting off board members' access has been the thing that we're most advised to do.
Well, that makes sense.
One more thought, Holly. I think that's a great idea. One thought on that front is maybe we're thinking about it backward. Like maybe thinking migrate inactive folks to alumni.ignitionnw.org is wrong. Maybe it's that board members happen to be in a privileged domain, board@ignitionnw.org. That is sort of the organization unit that has access to restricted stuff, etc. Because I think the board population at any moment is much more clear than the population of active or inactive or on hiatus or in retirement or backpacking in Europe that our community is kind of really good at pulling off at any moment in time. So maybe I'll bring this up at the tech committee because that could be that could dodge some of the questions here.
Cool. Are we ready to move on, or someone who else would like to speak on this?
I guess I'll just say one thing in here, is that the only thing that I've seen in my time here on the board of ex people needing access, and it's people like Ben, you know, former president, former this and that, but it's been far and few between. You know, and I think if you give people an alumni access, they all have a board, you know, at alumni, blah, 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 then you can give them select and they don't have an opportunity to, one, speak for the board, two, have access to the sensitive information. So it solves a couple of things. And honestly, that's not going to be a very big group. And whether that's producers or board members or whatever, that could just be a lump group. And the moment one of those people becomes active again, bloop, right back into the fold, and it's like they never left. But you see my point.
All right. Are we ready to move on? Yeah. All right. So officer updates are next, starting with me. I don't have any updates. Next is Natasha.
No update as vice president. I will jump into, no, I'll wait till finance committee. I have a couple of updates there.
The next would be secretary, who is out of the country. So I guess that's it for officer updates. Treasurer's on this list, but our treasurer isn't officially an officer because they're not a board member. They're Marco is just interim treasurer until we find a board member treasurer. So, and he's fresh and probably doesn't have an update anyway. So we're going to move on to committee updates, starting with tech.
Hello. So as Feynman mentioned, our meeting was not the week prior to this, so we've already reported on our last meeting. Our next meeting is next week. We are still working on the web page design and redoing the web page. We are looking for more tech and non-tech people who are interested in these tech discussions and helping us hammer all this out. And that can mean anything from radios to, you know, I've been a producer a lot. These are the kinds of things that I would like, you know, et cetera. So don't feel that you have to be like a tech genius, although we do welcome tech geniuses. We'll let them come. That's our report from me. Do you have anything to add, Feynman? Okay.
Nothing to add.
Next up is the bigger one, which is events. Ethan and Holly.
So we had an embarrassment of riches, and 3 fantastic people applied. We had offered the position, the 2nd-year contract option that we voted on previously, to Josh and Patty. They considered it and decided, Josh said, you know what, that's great, but I want to throw my name in with everybody else. I don't want to just be handed this. And I want you to find me a great people to work with. So we had Josh, Andy, and Jennifer applied. And we interviewed them and we're pretty impressed. And so we offered the position to Josh. He accepted. He is the nomination that we have for the board to consider for the 2024 critical producer. He is already, just like the awesome Kendra did, he's already kind of planning stuff just in case you okay it. Patty has said that he would like to still be super involved, but doesn't want to be a producer. He has a lot of work things going on. There's a lot of like changes in his life that have happened since last year. But in typical true awesome Patty fashion, he told Josh that he'll help him in any way he wants him to. They're going to discuss whether Patty will be an associate, a director, or a lead. And so Josh is going to look at what he needs and talk about it with Patty. We offered the associate producer position nomination from the events board or events committee to Andy. He's amazing. He's been doing volunteer work, kind of working towards this since 2019. And we honestly really agonized over whether we should just go ahead and have him just be the co-producer this year or offer him the associate producer. We hemmed and hawed about all the different possibilities, had a big discussion, and in the end decided to discuss it with Josh further. And after that discussion, we decided to offer Andy the associate producer role. He was super excited about it, doesn't have any ego in the game at all, is just really excited to do lots of work. And so we are nominating that also. Even though we don't typically pick a producer's associates, producers pick their own associates. It's kind of a unique situation. And so we're putting his name forward as an associate, which Josh is okay. And then Jennifer was ridiculously intelligent, extremely experienced, very organized, super passionate, and exactly the kind of people that we want to have coming in fresh blood to our events. However, we were a little bit scared to give Jennifer the top-notch position of being in charge of absolutely everything of the largest event that we hold, because they haven't been to as many or that many, they've been to one burner event. However, because they have so much related experience to recommend them, we thought, you know what, we really want to encourage her to come and be a director, be a really important lead, use that awesome skill and energy to really help our events. We talked about it with her. She's super stoked about it. We told Josh about it. He's also super stoked about it. So they're going to talk about how she can be part of Josh's team. So that's what happened with our elections.
So we here on the events committee board, we're obligated to pass on the suggestion, and that's Josh as the critical producer, and that's what we have to decide if that's who we want to do. And here as the board, and we have to go ahead and make a motion and get it voted on, and then we can do a contract.
I make a motion to vote for Reboot as critical producer.
Second.
I second this.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I just want to ask a critical producer.
What? Could you repeat that, Natasha?
Yes, I wanted to say that we need to vote on Josh being critical producer for 2024.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the motion.
Yes, specifically, say the year.
Okay.
All right. And I think that the ayes have it. So that was the only business that we brought forward this month. The events committee meeting. We have other things that we'll be talking on Slack and whatnot, and we have more people that we've entered into our Slack channel because we got more interest. So that's fantastic. And I will be I would like to also say, hey, with me not continuing my tenure, looking for another position on the board, that I will be. This board will have to decide on another committee chair, and probably sooner the better, because that way somebody understands that.
That's actually both chairs. I'm also
Yep.
resigning. And that's a lot of our committees, actually. That's most of our committees. So
Versus cold turkey in it versus, segueing or something. So not that we have a whole lot of people here or people currently, but my intention is to keep going to events committee meetings. But I'm putting that to enter into the minutes now.
Duly noted.
It says here also that C compression apps start in January. So I think that's an important thing to note.
That is the next thing, is that we will be reviewing the application and to go forward with putting that, getting that either, I don't remember
January.
whether we decided on January, February, but I know we're going to start the process in January. So
we said we want to list all applications 9 months plus 3 weeks before the event. So 9 months, 3 weeks before the first weekend in October, we would list it.
well, then that would be January.
Good girl. Wonderful.
All right. That's all we got here on the events committee, unless the public or anybody has questions. Going once. Going twice.
I like that someone called us a good girl. That was nice.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Next is fundraising, and that's me. Fundraising has been a very quiet committee, and this week it was just Cassie Wade and a friend of hers who's interested in potentially joining some committees, who was just observing. We really were excited about the possibility of a gala as a fundraiser, and it dovetails in with events. So there's not a lot we can really talk about because this is really dependent on what events is deciding. And I know that reignition is not happening in 2024, but if reignition does happen in 2025, we on the fundraising committee feel strongly that it should be more of a fundraising event that focuses on an art auction and smaller, not really a rave, but more of a fancy dress up event where there are cocktails and fancy cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, or a meal, an entertainment, and an art auction that would actually make some money for the org. The other thing that we really feel strongly about and recommend to the board, and I would really love to see this written up in our budget, is hiring a grant writer. And I don't know if that's a position that could dovetail into the administrative professional that we want to hire with some of our tasks. But having a grant writer means that we pay someone who can do the hard work of researching grants that we may be eligible for, writing the grants, and then being the person who sort of, keeps track of those grants and how they're used, and then files the reports with the grantees. So that's it for fundraising. Next up, acculturation. Because Sugar was out of town acculturation meeting for her, so I was a temporary chair. The acculturation meeting was attended by also Marley, who's on the board. And gosh, I wrote this down somewhere and now I don't remember. There was somebody else there. Marley, do you remember? It was Cassie, because Cassie is joining all of the committees and is fabulous. And a gentleman who is new to the community, who was curious about acculturation and had a bunch of questions to ask about the 10 principles, had never attended a burn before, but was really interested in it. And it turned into a really fun discussion on sharing how the principles work and how our community works. And getting him turned on to some of the groups on Facebook that he can join where he could get more information. And he walked away feeling really jazzed. He says he's kind of a shy, socially awkward person, but he's big on tech. He had a lot of ideas on how he could participate, how he could maybe help make art projects. And so he wants to connect to the community, and he got a lot out of that meeting. So that was interesting and fun. Marley, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we also talked a little bit about potentially restarting the principles description series that I think Mariah was doing last time with Max, where we talk about each of the principles individually and kind of what they mean and what they mean to everybody. And then we also talked about potentially linking the volunteer party to the newbie picnic.
The volunteer party and the newbie party absolutely have to stay separate, because the newbie party is something that we have to do as a regional via Burning Man, and so we can't really combine the two. They have to stay separate. We found that out just recently. And if that's it for acculturation, grants is up next, because grants doesn't really meet. There hasn't been a grant meeting. Grants meets basically as needed when there are grants being rolled out. And since we haven't had a need for that since decompression grants, we did not meet last month. And so there's nothing to say there, except that I will say that the grants committee needs a new chair beginning next year. So if anyone here on the board is interested who's staying, or anyone who's considering joining the board wants to take that on, definitely needs a new person. And I am probably going to stay in the committee, because I had a lot of ideas and rolled things out in a way that I think was a lot more effective than previous grants. And so I'd like to help make that transition and continue to be on that committee as a community member. Next up is comms, and that is Megaphone.
Hi. The comms committee meeting was just me and community member Julie Bergmans. It was the first time she had attended the comms committee meeting, but it sounds like she and also Cassie will be at the next one. They are both ready and willing to help me out with getting things rolling. So the things that we talked about doing were, I have, as I've said in the Slack, a monthly newsletter. I kind of changed course just in my notes to change it to like a digest. I don't mean that it's like, it could evolve into a newsletter, but just something that I send at the beginning of the month, every month, that has all of the dates for all of our upcoming meetings and whatever news we have. So like this month it was that we were looking for board members, and that we added Marco as the treasurer. My idea for this is not only would it be things that come from that, but also that the board would have access to a submission form that would populate into a spreadsheet for us, so that we would have things that we could add to that digest, and also things that would need to be scheduled during other times, so that it's not just somebody saying in Slack like, hey, could you do this? It's more like an official, this is the puts on my plate. And then I'm going to take and import the comms calendar that we use for decompression and reignition, and put it into the board folder, so that there is a calendar that the committee will have access to. And then we can assign who is doing like what post and on what days those posts are going to be live, and everyone will have access to that, so you can know like what's coming up. And the other thing is, I know that I saw in the folder that there was like an attempt. I think there's a charter, but I've heard that there's not like an official charter for it. So I'm going to make it a point to look at the other committee charters to kind of figure out how to do that and attend some other meetings and things like that, so I can get used to chairing this committee. Yeah, other than that's about it. Mostly like, I guess, I don't know if this is a thing that needs voting on for the monthly digest, or if that's just something that like I run past you guys if anybody objects to me doing that. Yeah, and we need more, you know, if you're interested in helping get the word out about meetings and things like that, please come to the meetings. It's been pretty sparsely populated and we need lots of help.
All right, next committee is finance, and that's Natasha. Natasha, are you there? It looks like your internet connection might be bad.
Can you hear me now? Is this better? I'm sorry, I was muted.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, a couple of things. First of all, I would like to make a report to the community, because I think we need to start doing this on a monthly basis, of what our finances look like. So currently, we have 4 bank accounts. We have one bank account that's used for critical, one bank account that's used for sea compression, one bank account for reignition, and one for our general expenses. And there's also a savings account. The savings account has about $5,000 in it. Total between all 5 accounts, we have roughly $300,000 at this point. It is hard to say, you know, how many commitments we have to pay out, but it looks like we're in a fairly good situation. Now, this is a report that I'd like. I don't know if this needs to come from the finance committee on a monthly basis or from the treasurer, with basically also a description of what were, let's say, our top 5 income line items and our top 5 expenses, which aren't specific event related, because the events have their own bank accounts and kind of have their own independent budget. I don't know if we need a finance committee as such. Maybe other people would have another opinion. We've been functioning without a functional one since I pretty much joined the board. And I think we need a treasurer and maybe an external CFO, like somebody who is a professional in being a chief financial officer, like a lawyer, but not a lawyer, but like equivalent to a lawyer, who will work hourly at, let's say, 2 or 3 hours a month on looking and helping us achieve our financial goals. So thoughts, ideas. More than an accountant Wi-Fi. Basically an accountant, yes, but like more than just an accountant. It is also separate from whoever does our taxes, because there needs to be a separation. This person can also like look at critically at the tax that we do.
I have one quick thought here that I'm not super attached to, but just kind of thinking this through, like a really good operational model here would be, so I'm completely with you that we should have monthly reports in this meeting on the financial condition of the organization. That seems customary, responsible, and the right thing to do. I think that when we have a treasurer with the spoons to do it, I think that ultimately preparation of those reports falls to the treasurer. I think where the finance committee kind of comes in is that it would be the small subset of the board that can kind of workshop the numbers with the treasurer before the treasurer shows up with a whole bunch of surprise numbers that no one on the board has had a chance to ask questions about at the public board meeting with 30 people, and 8 of the 11 board members have surprised looks on their faces. So I think I believe in the finance committee, and I think it should kind of be the sanity check ring for the treasurer's preliminary results before they go public at the meeting. That's my quick thoughts.
Marley, go ahead.
That was the intent of the finance committee, and it also does not have to be limited to board members. It's open to community members.
I don't know, Natasha, is that terribly divergent from how you think about this?
No, that actually does make sense. With that, I still think we should hire a professional to help us with our financials. I think it is more important in a way than having, a lawyer on retainer is having. It's basically a CPA accountant that is our chief financial officer, but as a hired one.
So we'd have a bookkeeper, a paid accountant, a treasurer, and then pay a CFO to like plan big picture what we're doing financially.
We'd have a bookkeeper that basically handles our QuickBooks, like just matches the expenses, puts it into proper accounts and all of that. We would have an accountant that once a year prepares our annual tax filing, and that's all they do. We will have a treasurer that basically does all the payouts and money coming in for the board and as a board member. And yes, we'll have a CPA. We'll have a chief financial officer that will advise us. Are we doing right? Are we doing wrong? Is this the right way to do? Maybe we need to take $30,000 of the money we have and invest it in this, or I don't know, like just a general thought.
I'd love to hear what Marco has to say since he keeps getting skipped over here.
Yeah.
My comment was going to be like, tell me what you want to see in these financial reports, and I can prepare them, share them with the board ahead of the meeting so you guys can look at it. So there won't be the surprised look on your faces. And then you can say yes or no, sure. As an organization, I think it's very good to be transparent and say, hey, this is what we've got. The other comment is on Natasha's suggestion for an additional financial person. I mean, unless you're going to do like investing and creating an endowment or something like that. I mean, it sounds like that's what a financial planner is to me, is like, hey, we've got all this money. What do we do with it? As far as, an accountant who does taxes, a bookkeeper who handles the reconciliation of all the accounts and stuff. I mean, the bookkeeper and the accountant seem to be sort of overlapping jobs. And sorry, I have to run off and turn an alarm off.
The bookkeeper and the accountant are not overlapping. The bookkeeper does the day-to-day, like week-to-week reconciliation of QuickBooks. The accountant comes in once a year, prepares the taxes, and also kind of controls the work of the bookkeeper. And it cannot be the same. These should be separate people.
I think the way I interpreted that was like the CFO could do the bookkeeping stuff, which we already have a bookkeeper for. And the CFO could advise on like investments, endowments, etc. I have worked for larger nonprofits that have CFOs to manage like futures and that mortgage things, like they take out big loans to do operating things throughout the year. There was a foster foundation that I worked with, and they would, have like these big loans that they would take out to do certain campaigns. And then CFOs would kind of plan these financial futures and like big picture kind of stuff like that. But for an organization of our size, and like maybe not necessarily operating in the kind of figures that stuff like that does, I'm not sure that we have or will approach enough finances to talk about futures and endowments and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, my point here. So the bookkeeper is somebody who gets around $50 to $70 an hour, and a CFO is somebody who gets about $300 to $400. So using a CFO to do your books doesn't quite make sense. Big picture, I don't know. I'm looking at our bank account. We got enough. We have probably at least $100,000 that are like left in profit after all events and everything.
And just for some history there, when I left my treasurer duties on the board in 2010, there was $66,000. In 2016, there was about 50,000 in sort of funds for events and stuff, and we put aside that $80,000 in an investment account, which then got pulled back in to do AltSpace, which y'all know how that turned out. So
it looks like we kind of reached a point where we recovered from AltSpace, recovered from COVID.
You are more than, one event away from bankruptcy.
Yeah. We're not just one event away from bankruptcy. And therefore, maybe it's time to start thinking of what do we do with this money a little bit long-term-ish. Marley?
We should probably decide what our minimum threshold is, that one event away from bankruptcy number, set it so that we don't go below it, and then decide what we have as excess, because I don't think we've done that.
And typically organizations will have a 3-month operating reserve, which we've never reached. So typically organizations do that. So like if there's things like COVID or whatever, you don't lose everything. We just so happen to kind of be in a good position to survive that. We have lost a bunch of major funders through COVID. One of the reasons why we got so far ahead is some of the financial mismanagement. We hadn't paid producers in 2 years. And so we're catching up on all of that stuff and paying for things. Like today we had a $20,000 bill from just our bookkeeping catch up and the last bit of C compression, or the site for C compression, not the last bit of C compression. So one thing I'm saying is, even though we might look at a bank account and say, oh my gosh, we have $100,000, it cost somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000 or 90,000 to hold a C compression. So we do have to kind of look at much bigger picture to say whether we have the money for stuff. We're also talking about hiring a grants writer. We're talking about this board really needs to hire an admin person to do a lot of the day-to-day admin functions. We're going to have to pay them something, even if they're part-time. That's going to be a certain amount per year. We've talked about hiring an asset manager to kind of manage a lot of our assets, do our storage, handling all that stuff. These things add up. And when you're done hiring an admin professional, a grants writer, an asset manager, and paying for, $20,000 a shot bills for things, we don't actually have that much money. And having barely enough money to survive one event is actually not really an operating reserve that most people consider fiscally responsible.
All right. Well, let's circle back to it in January, February, after we have a budget, so we're clear where we're at.
My hands up.
No, yeah, sorry.
It'll be quick though. So I think everybody's right, including Natasha. I don't think that we need to hire a full-time, not even full-time. I don't think we need to hire a permanent CFO. I don't know that this needs to be part of our org structure design, but there are people out there that will charge a consulting rate to answer the question one time of, I've looked at kind of what your organization looks like over the course of several years, inputs, outputs. In my experience across 30 organizations similar in size to you that produce events similar to yours, these are reasonable reserves, that you're good at this. You could probably afford to get higher than a 0.1% return on your savings account and maybe put some of this in CDs instead, right? And it could be a totally reasonable organization size and scale appropriate kind of plan for how to do slightly better with the money that we do have, kind of spend $2,500 in order to make $25,000 kind of thing, right? And I also agree with the folks that are like, I don't know if we can afford this yet. My hunch is very strongly we can afford to do that if we judge that it's the right thing to prioritize within the budget. But let's talk budget, and then I absolutely think this should be part of that overall picture. Kendra, hands up.
Just confirming, you said that the C compression final venue bill got paid today?
I don't know if it got paid. We received it today.
Yeah.
It came yesterday.
I don't know. I don't know if you saw that, Kendra, but
Okay.
they only sent it to you and I. So I forwarded it to the board and to the treasurer today, and then we'll deal with it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
If finance is done, that wraps up our meeting. Is fine. Are we done? Anybody have anything else they want to say?
I'm done.
Okay. Then I move to adjourn.
Second.
Well, then I.
Very well, everybody.
Aye, yeah, I say
All
aye.
right, thank you. Bye.
Everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.